Starliner Media. Starliner Media presents Music Night at the Majestic with your host, Michael Boswell. Brought to you by...
Coordinating information on multiple signs and displays can be a big hassle. SDD presents Kiwi Sign, a digital signage controller that is not only easy to use, but cost effective. Imagine being able to control all your digital signage from one easy dashboard, whether from your phone, tablet, or computer, to anywhere in the world. It even works with your existing signs and displays. SDD-US.com, SDD-US.com. All right, it's time once again for Music Night at the Majestic. With us tonight, Mr. Bill Lloyd. Bill, welcome to the show.
Hello, Michael. Nice to talk to you again after all these years.
Yeah, it's only been, 30 years?
Something like that, yeah.
The funny thing is, as you mentioned that, back in my neophyte days of working in radio, you and Radney were kind enough to do an interview. You were playing a gig in Chicago. And a couple of things stand out from that. After your sound check, I was talking with the club owner, and you guys were prepping. You're gonna did sound check, then you're gonna fresh up a bit, then do the interview, and then do your show. And so I was waiting for you guys to call on me. The club owner comes over and asked me what I was there for, and I tell him, and he says, "Well, I'll tell you something about these two guys." I go, "What's that?" He goes, "I'm amazed." I go, "Okay." He says, "We've never had anybody who was less demanding than Radney and Bill." He says, "All they wanted was a little bit of water. They did their sound check. They didn't ask anything of anybody, came in, did their job." And, says it was so refreshing. So.
Well, that's nice. I don't remember having a big rider, back in the day. I think there was some beer on there for the guys in the band, things like that. But that was never getting a brown M&Ms taken off the taken off the rider or whatever. That was never part of our deal,
Yeah. Well, you guys impressed him because he said you were the easiest people he ever had to work with.
Well, that's nice. That's nice to hear.
Yeah.
That's nice.
Well, it only took you 30 years to find out about the compliment, but at least
that's okay. I'll take it. You know what? It's never too late for one of those. I like that. So that's very nice of him to say that, and that's great. That's great. I love the Beatle record you have on your wall behind you there.
Thank you.
That's a Capitol record. That's
yep.
That's a stereo version.
Yes, correct.
Of Meet the Beatles, and it's got the little gold record sticker on there too. I can spot that.
Yeah, you are clearly a Beatles aficionado.
I sure do love them. I did. I mean, it was the big impetus for me. I was 9 when they were on Ed Sullivan, and I know that was like this starting chapter for so many musicians. I think there's so many musicians that began doing their apprenticeship into rock and roll or into music or of any kind of music, really, being influenced to pick up a guitar by seeing just how much fun those guys were having. So. Exactly.
Now tell me this, you were 9 when they were on. Did you immediately ask for a guitar, for a gift?
Yeah, well, I my dad was a drummer. He was a swing drummer. And so a lot of that stuff was playing around the house. And so I wanted a drum set. And I got a drum set in 2nd grade, which was right about that same time. And but I did get a guitar a couple of years later and kind of morphed from being, I was still playing drums all throughout high school. In fact, if you go back to my hometown, you can still run into people there who, even after being in the business for however many years I have now, he goes, "Oh yeah, I heard you were in the music business. Are you still playing those drums?" People still, I still have old friends who, or acquaintances, I should say, who still ask me if I'm playing drums. So, and which I am. But that was the Beatles was a big impetus for everything, to not only pick up musical instruments but also to write songs, which is what the main path that I took in my life was being a songwriter. That was kind of number one, and then wanting to be a record maker after that.
Yeah, and tell me this: do you remember the very first song that you ever wrote?
Yes, I do, because it was there was a Beatles single. Getting back to the Beatles again, there was a Beatles single, and it was. I'm trying to remember which single it was, but it had a thing saying "Eight Arms to Hold You" was from the movie Eight Arms to Hold You, which was going to be Help. That was the initial title of the Help movie, and they ended up not calling it that. But the single still came out. Maybe it was Ticket to Ride. I'd have to go check. There's someone on the internet right now looking it up. But but anyway, it had from the movie Eight Arms to Hold You, and when that didn't become a movie, I wrote a little song called that when I was, I was like 10 or 11 or whatever.
Did you ever think about actually, going back and tweaking it and
I
recording
don't
it?
remember it much of it. I just remember kind of the melody and how it went, but I don't remember enough of it for it to. I might have it written down somewhere. I keep everything, but anyway, but I started writing songs with a friend of mine starting in grade school. I mean, it was like, and then throughout high school, I was writing and started playing in bands where we would do original material pretty early on. And, but I was playing professionally 3 nights a week starting when I was 15. So
Wow.
I was a drummer, like I said, back then. But, it was really that sort of, it was such a golden period for music in general. On Top 40 radio, you could hear, and Radney and I used to go on and on about this, but on Top 40, when we were growing up, you could hear such a variety. You'd hear not only the British invasion stuff, the Beatles, the Stones, the Zombies, the Animals, Herman's Hermits, whatever it was. And then you would hear Motown, Supremes, Four Tops, Temptations. Then you would hear country crossover stuff, which was Roger Miller, Glenn Campbell, Buck Owens. And all that stuff was just so great, And so the top 40 of the 60s was such a musically wide format that there was just no borders on it. And that's what I loved to, and the era of country music that Radney and I kind of fit into back then 30 years ago was kind of a little country format was pretty wide open just for a year or two there where they let Steve Earle in and they let Newgrass Revival in and there was some really I don't want to say challenging music, but it was they definitely music that colored outside the lines,
That 86 to 87 period, as you said, with
Yeah,
Laney Kravitz,
maybe into
Twilight.
88 and 89 too,
Yeah.
Desert Rose Band, the O'Kanes, Lyle Lovett, Nancy Griffith. There was just so much going on back then.
Mhm. Absolutely. Now, you're doing the playing in bands through high school and stuff.
Yeah,
How did it
and always
progress
doing
from
original
there?
material and then doing cover songs for money, and stuff like that. The first band that I had was on record was a band called Southern Star, which was a very much a folky songwriters collective kind of thing, and it was my friend David Surface who's guy I still write songs with all these years later. But it was Dave, my friend David, and I, and another friend of ours, David, who was also named David. And then I don't know if you know the artist Kim Ritchie. Do you know Kim's music?
I am a fanatic for her stuff.
Okay. Well, we met in college,
Okay.
and the first band we had was called Southern Star. And the first time we ever all got on a record was one of those radio station samplers out of Louisville, Kentucky. And we ended up doing a song recorded in my room at my apartment and on a 4-track machine. And but it was acoustic harmonies and stuff. And we toured a little, traveled. We didn't tour, we traveled. But we opened up for Tom Rush at Center College, and then played in Louisville and played in Nashville, and then Bowling Green is where we were based out of, where everyone was living. And that band went electric after Kim left, and it morphed into a couple other bands. One of was called Sergeant Arms was one, and that was kind of during the new wave era, and that was a really good band. And my friend Dave and I moved to New York in 1980 to try to make something happen there, and ran out of money, came home. John Lennon had been killed. It was just sort of a quick trip up and got a real big dose of life, and came back home and made some more independent records. But I moved to Nashville in '82. I don't mean to ramble on too long here, Michael, but
The type of
80,
stuff our viewers, love. So
okay.
they are music fanatics who
Okay.
love details and stories behind
All right.
songs.
Well, I didn't move to Nashville till the end of '82 after making some independent records with the band Sergeant Arms, and then I moved to town and tried to ingratiate myself in the rock scene in Nashville, and joined a couple different bands, and was just writing a lot of songs and making tapes in my apartment. Had a 4-track machine and just writing songs, demoing, and it was just a never-ending process. Working in record stores in the day and going out at night trying to meet people, and one thing led to another. Got in a couple different local bands and got some airplay locally on some sampler albums that the Vanderbilt radio station put together. So I actually had a following for my music, and a solo record almost done by the time Radney and I had gained some momentum with the songs we were writing. And Radney and I met at MTM Music Publishing, where we both were younger guys who had been signed. I was signed as a pop writer, and he was signed as a country writer.
Okay.
But that didn't matter to us. We just wanted to do what we did, and it was that amalgam of. He's got a really country voice. Obviously, he's a country singer, but he's a good songwriter, and then my pop sensibilities and guitar stuff, and and songwriting too, all just kind of came together in kind of a third thing that sounds a little different than what he does, and a lot different than what I do. And but it was a nice combination, and that thing lasted about 4 years, maybe a little longer.
All right.
But we did interestingly, we did do a reunion record back in, what was it, 2011. So 2011, 2012, we did actually do a handful of dates and had great fun making another record. So.
All right. Now, I was going to ask you, Feeling the Elephant. Was that the did you
That most of that predated Foster and Lloyd.
Okay.
And but it didn't come out till right when just how the music business works. You record all this stuff, but then things come out later than when they were recorded, and that came out right before the Foster and Lloyd thing. And but it kind of helped us in kind of a weird way, because I was getting college radio airplay on that record, and also some nice reviews, and it sort of helped get Foster and Lloyd in some critical circles that it may not have otherwise. I don't know, maybe.
Well, to digress a bit and talk about Feeling the Elephant, there's 2 tracks on there that are, I know the Nothing Comes Close has been on a number of different compilations. Lisa Ann, that song has one of my favorite lines. You left a hole in my heart the size of your jacuzzi.
Yeah.
How did that line come about? It's
just a funny line that kind of, the song had been rewritten. It had a different lyric and a little bit of a different melody when I first demoed it. And when I did it on a 4-track, and then when I kind of rewrote it, I just thought it could be better and just made it simpler. And, I think I'd never done a song with a girl's name. And so that name just kind of came up. And then but it was just, I don't know. I like that record. It's got a, it's power pop record with lots of Beach Boysy kind of harmonies that my then girlfriend and I sang all the harmonies on it, and then but there's like a mandolin on it even. So it's kind of a bizarre little thing. But yeah, the Rhino Records used that on their Poptopia series, which
Right.
was nice. And then Nothing Comes Close also was on this Ace Records compilation that came out just last year. All those years later, it was on a compilation out of England, which is a power pop compilation of like 20, 30 songs. And that one made that one. So
Yeah.
it's
Well,
going
those
back.
two songs are on one of my go-to playlists.
Well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Yeah.
And that record was all done sort of piecemeal. Well, I didn't go in. In fact, I still don't really do that much. When I go record, go record a lot of songs and then kind of pick and choose what I'm going to work with and what's going to be on a record. So I still kind of piece them all together,
Yeah. Well, now moving on to the first Foster and Lloyd album, the way that I became aware of you was the original video for Crazy Over You.
Yeah.
And when that song hit, that's obviously the song that established you, in the country market. What was that like when that song hit for you?
Well, it was really crazy, Michael, because it really, we didn't know we were just hoping to make a record that we would be proud of and do something that later on, if it didn't work, we could at least say, hey, we tried to do something fun. And but the first single popped really quickly, and RCA had to rush to get the album together. In fact, had they gotten it together a little sooner, we might have had some better sales on the first album because it was before Christmas. I think the single came out in November or something like that, and it just popped so quickly that the album didn't come out till after the first of the year. And but interestingly, we were getting all this. We did not have management, so we would go into the record company, and it was very much like a big brother in the best sense, not big brother like some
Orwellian.
Orwellian thing. It was more like they really took care of us because we didn't have our own management. We were younger guys who, that it was just like a big team. The radio promo guys and the girls who all did the press stuff. These are all friends of mine still after all these years, or at least a lot of these people are, and we had direct access to the people who ran the label, Joe Galani, Randy Goodman, those people, and it was just. It was a little fairy tale like because I don't think things work like that anymore. I really don't. I think that so I think in fact they came to us and said, "You guys really have to pick a manager," and we finally met with a few managers and made our decision. And Tim Dubois, who later ran Arista Records, was our first manager, and he said, "Yep, you signed with me, and then you went into the top 10," which was like, of course, that is like, somebody take credit for it, but it was like the record company did everything, and I think there was just such a symbiotic, good feeling about our record and about how well the single was doing that it kind of created such a good feel that they really liked working that record, and we liked everybody there, and it was like, and they'd given us carte blanche to make the kind of record we wanted to. And so, and it sounded a little rockier and a little different than a lot of other stuff at the time that was coming out of country labels in Nashville. So,
Yeah, now there's another track on there that I think truly stands the test of time, and that's Sure Thing. You guys had such an Everly-esque, a vocal on it.
I do love that song still. It's one that we wrote out on a porch. We were at MTM. We were writing out on the porch in the sunshine. I've got sunshine coming in my window over here, so I can still remember it. That song. One of the wonderful things is that people will come to you later and they'll tell you that one of your songs got used in their life in some way, and there have been a couple times where people come up and told us that that particular song was used at a wedding, used in their wedding. So that's really nice.
Yeah.
That's a really pretty song, though. I really like it, and it does have that Everly's thing to it, and yeah. So, but anyway, we were allowed to do a lot, and and we made 3 full albums for RCA. In fact, the third record was called Version of the Truth, and they decided, oh, you guys need to go back in and cut some more. So they re-released Version of the Truth. I wanted them so badly to call it Another Version of the Truth, but they didn't do that. But they put out Version of the Truth. Actually, there's 2 versions of Version of the Truth, and then when that didn't really, when radio had just kind of gone off us, Radney decided he wanted to go solo, and I was doing some other things at the time. I was working with Carl Perkins, producing some sides on him, and I was already starting to cut another solo record for myself, and then that I also was working with Rusty Young from Poco, and we put a band together called the Sky Kings, eventually called the Sky Kings, with John Cowan from Newgrass Revival and Pat Simmons from the Doobie Brothers, and we made a record for RCA that was very expensive, and but it was in that weird place between pop and country where the company decided to just sit on it rather than put it out, which was just such a shame. But it did come out digitally about 3 years ago, and that was kind of nice that, after all this time. And then Rusty and John and Pat went back to the Doobies, and Rusty and John and I went to Warner Brothers, and we did another bunch of records for them, recordings, I should say. And there were 2 singles or no, 3 singles. And finally, the stuff that was on Warner Brothers was put out by Rhino, which Rhino has a Warner Brothers affiliation, and they put out a thing on a label called Rhino Handmade. And it was not only the album that we were proposing to do for Warner's, but also a whole lot of bonus tracks. So that's a really cool thing. And it features Rusty and John and I. And that's a pretty cool record called Out of the Blue by the Sky Kings. So, so we did that, and I kept making my solo records throughout this whole time, and which I'm still doing. I just had one out a few months ago called Don't Kill the Messenger.
Right.
That's the name of it. And all this is available on my website at BillLloydMusic.net. Just to plug that, if you don't mind.
We actually, alternating through the show, had your website scrolling across the bottom of the screen.
Oh, there it is. There it is.
Hopefully, you're.
Look at that. This looks like my whole bio down there.
Yeah. So we're trying to get to help you out as much as we can here.
Well, thank you, sir.
So I'll tell you what. To digress a bit, the second album you and Radney had, that one, the production was a little more adventurous.
Well, yeah, you know what, we went from working with a great guy named Ed C., who was also a partner with Paul Worley, who had done a lot of great productions at the time, and he and Paul had set up a business together, and so that kind of, we felt like it wouldn't be good to go back to Ed, because we just wanted to continue to have full control over what we were doing. So the engineer that did all our demos with us, a guy named Rick Will, did that second album with us, and it really has a much more big, boomy rock sound to it on a lot of the tracks. But I think there's some really good songs on there, and I was really proud of a lot of it. A lot of it sounds very much like 1988 or whatever, just the sound of it sounds of its time. But it's got some really good songs on there, and we had some great guest stars, on that. Marshall Crenshaw came in and played with us on that record.
In fact, actually, that the single, or the track that Marshall was on, She Knows What She Wants, every day on our Music Night Facebook page, we have a song of the day. And a couple months back, She Knows What She Wants was the song of the day.
Oh, great.
And,
great.
And Yeah, we actually teased it with a question. Can you guess, who does, who the celebrity guest
I
on the
saw
show is?
that.
Oh,
I think you may have tagged me on that, or somebody did. And yeah, now I did. You get an answer, or did or?
we got we got private messages,
Oh,
from
okay.
people. Then of course people I know called me going, "Oh, come on, you know I know who that is."
Yeah.
Now you are continuing to do stuff. I know you've worked with Marshall on some of your solo stuff, correct?
Yeah, we wrote some songs together, and he's on my Set to Pop record, and we wrote a song that's on my Standing on the Shoulders of Giants record, and I played on a couple records of his. He had one called Miracle of Science that I play guitar on, um, and also we wrote a song on. He had another record following that we had co-written a song on, and just about 3 years ago, we did a gig together down in Memphis where it was just the two of us, and I backed him up, and even though it was his show, he wanted me to sing a couple songs in the middle, so I did, and so he's a good pal. I admire him so much as a songwriter and a player, and just as a human being, he's a really great guy.
Yeah. Now he was one of the people that played with you on Standing on the Shoulders of Giants.
Yeah, I think he did. I think he played on that record. I'm pretty sure he did.
Yeah, because we talked about the Beatles at the beginning. That one obviously had a couple of nods to the Beatles there.
Oh yeah, there was a song called Dr. Robert's Second Opinion, and that had a interesting lineup of people on it. If you're into reading the credits, and if you're a music fan and you like all the bands and know all the names, and I had it was a Cheap Trick Smithereens rhythm section with Dennis Dyken from the Smithereens on drums, and Tom Peterson from Cheap Trick on bass, and then Henry Gross and I are singing harmony, all the harmony parts, and yeah, so that had a neat thing to it. Yeah, I try my best to get. I feel so lucky to being in Nashville. I've had an opportunity to write songs and record and play on stage with so many of the people that are people that inspired me to do this, and people that when I was working in record stores, and I'd be poring over the records, over the credits, and I've gotten to write songs with people who I would go out and buy their records and follow their careers and stuff. So that's a real full circle, great feeling.
Yeah, I'm gonna guess that Graham Gouldman, who you worked with on wrote a song with on Working the Long Game, had to be one of those guys.
Oh, definitely. Yeah.
What was that like?
Well, it was, I'll tell you, it was kind of unnerving. I'm a huge fan. First off, when he was like 16 or 17, and this is in the mid 60s, he wrote For Your Love for the Yardbirds. He wrote Heart Full of Soul for the Yardbirds. He wrote Look Through Any Window and Bus Stop for the Hollies. No Milk Today for Herman's Hermits, East West. Anyway, he was competing with Lennon McCartney on a and he was like a teenager, and go forward, 40 something years, here I am in England. And he and I had met in Nashville and had traded some emails, but I was in London. So we ended up writing together. I went to his house, and yeah, it was a little unnerving, because I've just been listening to his stuff since I was a kid, and I feel confident enough to when I go play a songwriter show or go write with somebody. I've written with a lot of my heroes, so I generally don't feel nervous about it too much, but he's one of the big ones. And I remember he was, can I grab a guitar real quick?
Yeah, please.
He started playing this thing in A minor, which of course Bus Stop is in A minor, right? Starting my day, she's there, I say. But anyway, he started going, which to me is All Along the Watchtower. Bob Dylan, but also Jimi Hendrix had the
Right.
way. And I just thought, oh, he's trying to get rid of me. He's just trying to play something simple and get me out the door. But then he started humming this melody that was just gorgeous. And I thought, he's Graham Gouldman. That's that's I shouldn't doubt that, you know. And it was, but we ended up writing this song, and I worked on it a little bit and cut it for that Work in the Long Game album, and sent it to him, and he really liked it a lot. I really was very complimentary on what I did with it, in terms of the arrangement and parts and things like that. And so he told me he was going to cut it, and he sent it to me, and there it is on his new album as well. So that's just a nice feeling, you know.
That had to be an absolute thrill.
It is, you know, I really live off of those these days, you know, because I don't have any huge financial, you know, things coming in right now, and here we are in this COVID time. So it's just today I got the footage from February. Last show I did was with the Wild Honey Orchestra out in LA, where I got to play. They had reunited the Love and Spoonful, the living members of Love and Spoonful,
Hmm.
for a tribute night to them. And I got to play Nashville Cats with
Wow.
John Sebastian
Wow.
and Joe. And so they sent me that, or they posted that footage on Facebook. And so that just came in yesterday, first time I've seen it. And so I'm pinching myself, going, "Yeah, that was me out there with." So those kind of things really matter a lot to me at this point.
Yeah. Well, tell you what, to go back once again to when I did that initial interview with you so many years ago. You had told me a story about when you were producing. You just mentioned producing Carl Perkins.
Right.
You had told me a story about Mrs. Perkins and bringing you guys lemonade and cookies and stuff. Tell
Oh, it
everybody
was
that
awesome.
story.
Yeah. Yeah. He would, well, what I remember was, you know, I spent the night down at his house, and then he lived in Jackson, Tennessee, and his studio was in a little pool house out behind his home. And I was in the guest bedroom, and it was very surreal to me to hear a knock on the door in the morning. Go, "Bill, wake up now. Valda's got breakfast on." And that was Valda was his wife, loving wife for all those years. And you know, it's just, and worked with he and his sons, and it was just great. You know, Ratty and I used to open for Carl, and he would get us up to sing on True Love. And we do those, like that little Everly harmony part that was in there. And I mean, you know, our very first, it's been wonderful because our very first tour, uh, where we were actually touring from one city to another, was with Roy Orbison. We were the opening act for Roy Orbison.
Wow.
So, I mean, it's just been a whole lot of great memories over the years of. And then one of the things I've done here in Nashville is I put together a band for fun to play classic albums, and we do them in sequence, live and in sequence. And we only do 2 rehearsals. We're not one of those bands that it's called the Long Players, and like long playing record LP. And we since 2004 up through the first part of this year, which was 16th year of doing this, we have played albums from front to back with guest stars coming in, guest artists to come in and do the honors of singing these songs. And that's been a great fun thing to do. And then you know, and that band we really got the band honed to a T now. So we do take, you know, or at least we were taking corporate gigs and private gigs and flying around and doing some of that stuff. And that was a lot of fun. I really miss that.
Yeah. Well, I think everybody misses live music.
Yeah.
So
Oh man, it's just terrible. I really hope that they can find some sort of vaccine here soon. You know,
exactly.
because I'm not trusting people to behave to behave correctly. You know.
You've always got that human element to
Yeah.
have to
No
contend
kidding.
with.
No kidding. So anyway, until that happens, you know, we'll just try to play it as safe as we can, and try to stay alive, and keep making music.
There you go. Well, that's the one of the great things about technology. When it works, it's a beautiful thing. And fortunately, with all the advancements in technology, people can now record at home and have phenomenal sound quality.
Yeah.
So we've kind of got to a point where it takes a lot to stop the creative process. So
Yeah. Yeah.
even in times like these, there's still an outlet for folks.
Well, I feel like the people who really love doing it, who love the process itself, are going to still do it, and the people who were relying on a paycheck at the end of the day might find something better to do. And that's fine. That's fine with me. If that was your big motivation, then maybe you should go.
Exactly.
You should go either. I don't know.
There's another calling for you.
Be a contact tracer.
There you go. Well, tell you what, Bill, we're actually past our 30 minutes here.
Well, it's been a breeze. Thank you, Michael.
Oh, thank you for coming on the show. There's a lot of your stuff that we didn't even get to talk about. So hopefully in the future you'll have time to spare and want to come back.
I'm happy to talk about whatever you want to talk about. I urge people one more time to go to billlloydmusic.net, and there's videos on YouTube that you can find of songs from my solo records, and to kind of, if people are interested at all, it's out there. So.
All right. Well, as I said, actually, as we're speaking now, visit billlloyd.music.net is scrolling across the screen, and we will be linking to your website and videos on our Facebook page and musicnight.net.
Oh, great. Well, Michael, it's been fun talking to you again.
Likewise.
All right.
All right, everybody. Okay? Thank you much for watching. It's been Music Night at the Majestic. Thanks, Bill.
Okay. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.
This has been Music Night at the Majestic with Michael Boswell. If you enjoyed this edition of Music Night at the Majestic, follow us on Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, Instagram, and at musicnight.net. Music Night at the Majestic is a copyright production of Starliner Media. Any use of the accounts and descriptions of this program, its audio or visual content, without the express written consent of Starliner Media is prohibited. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll see you next time for Music Night at the Majestic. This is your announcer speaking. Starliner Media.